Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from alexmercedcoder.com, and this is a new series of React tutorial videos. This one is going to show you how to build your own setup and kind of go from there. So that way you have a template. So that's this first video, to build your React template. How do you do it? Now there's plenty of ways to do it. So when you go out there, there's a huge world of React templates and starter kits that use Webpack, that use Rollup, that use Gulp. I'm going to be using Parcel because it's just an easy one to set up. But just to understand what these things are doing. So typically React is a front-end library, and if you've seen my sort of initial React tutorial videos, I usually show you sort of the bare bones way to set it up, which is you use script tags, and you have to put all your React in one JavaScript file. It's or you have to, because the alternative is when you're just doing a plain vanilla code and not using any kind of bundler, is you either have to put all your code in one file or inject several script tags into your index.html or your HTML head. And that can get really cumbersome because you're putting them in because as files become interdependent, which one should be in which order, and that's where bundlers come in. They allow you to create your code across multiple files. It examines the files and then renders all that code into one JavaScript file that you can then deploy into production. So it allows you to have better code organization, yet still have sort of a more efficient code output in the end. And they generally have all these sorts of plugins, so that way you can use all sorts of cool tools. And that's where it generally gets difficult to set up. So if you're using Webpack or Rollup, you set up Webpack or Rollup to do the bundling, but then you have to add in like plugins to enable Babel to translate the JSX. You have to put in plugins if you want to use Sass or if you want to use TypeScript, and you have to configure these plugins. And it can be time-consuming to set up. I mean, once it's set up, it's set up, and you can just use the same boilerplate over and over again. But it can be time-consuming. Whether it's like Gulp, Rollup, whatever. Parcel, on the other hand, basically takes advantage of a lot of defaults. The fact that a lot of things are generally always set up the same way for most people. So what it does, it'll pick up on which defaults to use based on what you use in your project. So if you use a Sass file, it'll use Sass. If it knows there's a tsconfig.json in your project, it realizes, oh, you want to use TypeScript, so it'll enable TypeScript. Without you having to download all these extra plugins and configure them and all that stuff. That's the beauty of Parcel. So let's begin setting that up so you can see how easy it is. So in my React folder, I'm gonna create a new project. So a new folder we're gonna call it Project 1. Okay, I'm gonna open up the terminal into that project. I'm using Visual Studio Code if you haven't noticed. Keep in mind, I just woke up, so I'm a little groggy. Let's see here, Project 1. Now, what we want to do here is we're going to create a, we're just going to create a, we don't need to create any files, we just need to do our npm init-y. So that's going to create our package.json file. Touch a index.html because everything kind of works off the index.html. So everything that's going to happen is based on that file. Now we want to bring in a few libraries. I have my previous template here, so that just helps me remember. So basically, you want to bring in these libraries. So first, we'll install Parcel, React, and React DOM. So npm I React DOM, because that's what you need for React, and then Parcel because that's going to be our bundler. So we'll just give that some time. So we'll set up some of our boilerplate code. So let's go to our index.html. And what's going to happen is that Parcel will look at this index.html, read all of its script tags, whatnot, and just build out your website from there. And then put the final results in what's called a distribution folder, which it'll be named dist for short. So let's just put some boilerplate HTML. HTML5. Okay. Title our React website. Then let's put in some script tags. Okay, we don't need to put in the script tags for React. It'll figure that out. We just need to put a script tag to our main JavaScript file. Okay, so we'll put title. So we're gonna put a script tag, script source, and this will be to. What we're gonna do is we're gonna create a folder called source. So /source. And then in that file called source, we'll have a file called app.js. Okay. And test that out later. And then I'm just going to put, just because I always do, I put a little defer keyword there. Just in case. So I'm pretty sure Parcel will take care of all that. Okay, and then that's it. Okay, we can put in all our CSS and all that stuff in the source folder. Okay, it'll take care of all that. The only other thing I may want to add is our root component. So we'll just add a div with the ID of root, because it's just generally what you always do for a React project. You'll see why. Save. Cool. So that's going to be our entry point. So basically what happens here is that Parcel will read the script file and begin its bundling at this app.js and building everything out. Now our React code will inject all of its results in this div. That's why we need to have that there. And you'll see how it does that when we get to that point. Now let's start building out that folder. So let's build a folder in here called source. Okay, in this folder we'll create a couple other folders. We'll create a folder called CSS. It could be Sass, so if you wanted to use Sass, you would just change that to, doesn't matter what you call the folder, but you just use Sass files instead. So SCSS versus CSS. And I also want to create a new file called components. Okay, that's a file. I'm going to make a new folder. Use the trash. So new folder, components. And then you'd also create files for anything else you want to create files. So this is a pretty good starting organization. So you can also create one for images, but I'm not going to use any images during this particular exercise. But I guess we are building a boilerplate, so okay, we can, might as well. So in my source, I'll create a new folder for images. Okay, and then we need to create our app.js, new folder or new file, app.js. And that's kind of, this will be sort of where everything begins. So in React, so basically we need to actually import React. So because we're using Parcel, we can use ES6 imports. Okay, so you don't bring everything in through script tags. We're going to import everything using import syntax. So it would be import React from, and since we just do React. Okay, because it's all Node, and it'll pick up that's just from our React dependency that's installed in the Node modules folder. Also, I want to import React DOM. So import React DOM from React DOM. Okay. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to build a component. In this particular tutorial, I'm going to only use functional components. So if you want to learn how to use class components, watch my older React videos. There I go in depth on both. But for this, I'm just going to teach a strictly functional style of component design. So const, you always have your app component, which is generally where you start your application. App equals props. Okay, you always pass in props If you want to call it something else, you can, but you generally call it props. You pass in props to your function. Props is going to be where certain data gets passed in. We'll go over that more later. And then here, you just want to return what's called JSX. JSX is a special way of writing, it's a special syntax that looks like HTML. Really what happens is that the JSX compiler, which is probably using Babel in this case, it'll look at that JSX code and actually compose it to actual HTML strings that can then be rendered by the browser. But all that matters is that you just write all your HTML in parentheses. So return, that tells the compiler that this is JSX, and then it has to have at least, it has to have one HTML element as the parent. Okay, the easiest way to do it is just use a fragment. So a fragment is always just like this. You use an empty bracket and then a closing empty bracket. And React will know that this is a fragment, and then you can put whatever you want in between. Okay, so we're just going to put a h1 hello world just to test that this is working. Okay, cool. So there's our component. So all this function does is just return this JSX. And you can do whatever you want before the return, so you can put all sorts of logic here, and that's where you would do it. But right now, we're just getting this set up. Okay. And then what we have to do is we have to take this app component, which is really our website, and inject it into our index.html, and that's where React DOM comes in. So you use React DOM. Okay, and it's gonna be, you're gonna use its render function. And then the first thing you do is pass in what component you want to render, which is app. So just like that. And then where you want to inject it. We want to inject it right here. So essentially, basically what's going to happen is that React will place that code right here. And it just injects it there. So what I'm going to do is over here, I'm going to say document.get element by ID. That's how it grabs the element. And we're grabbing the one with the ID of root. Well, it knows what it is. Save. Cool. So now we have that set up. We need to test it out. So we need to set up some scripts in our package.json. Okay. So we want to set up a dev script. And to just go into development mode, which will have like, basically it'll have like file watching and hot reloading, all that stuff. We're just going to type in parcel index.html. So that way it starts with the index.html, reads the script tags, and kind of goes from there and builds it out. We're going to want to define a port, so that way we have the ability to do so. And let me just go back over here and look at how syntax. Okay, port 3000. And again, you can define any number. As long as it's like above 1050, you should be fine. Port 1050 and then open. Okay, so port 3000, what it does, it says listen on port 3000. Its default is like 1, 2, 3, 4. And open will open the browser, so you don't have to open the browser once it's done building. Okay, cool. So that's that script. That's what you'll be using when you develop. And then we need to have a script called start, which this script is what you do when you're done to build your final product. So that's parcel build index.html. Okay, let me just make sure over here, parcel build index.html. And I don't think we went and downloaded our dev dependencies yet, so we need to download this, because again, Babel is what translates to JSX, so without that, we're in trouble. So let's download these 3 dependencies. So let's see here. That would be npm I. Oh, nope, not there. So let me hit save there. npm I at Babel core. How about the other 2? At Babel core, Babel preset env, preset react. Okay, so at Babel preset env at Babel preset React. Cool. And then actually these are dev dependencies, so I need to put a little flag. So it's -- save dev. So that way it saves it as a dev dependency, which means the final output won't include it because we don't need it for the final output. It's only here for development purposes. The final code is compiled by Parcel and Babel and all its other plugins to be in plain JavaScript. So we just got to wait for that to install, and we should be good to go to run our first test. Okay. Bum, 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 bum. I'll just pause this while that does that. Okay, so let's see here. Looks like that's all installed. So let's take a look at our package.json. That looks good to me. So let's first test out the dev script, make sure that it's loading fine. So we should be able to get hello world. So in this case, it's npm run. And our script is called dev. So npm run dev. So let's give it a second for it to build. So basically what's happening now, Parcel is using everything that's under the hood to start. It reads the HTML file. It picks up on that script tag that links to the app.js, and then it follows all those import and export tags to build out your website. We haven't used any exports yet because that initial app.js is brought in through the script tag. Everything else will be brought in through exports and imports and all that fun stuff. So boom, 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 boom. It's building, it's building. It takes a little bit of time. And see, we have a new folder here called dist. Right now it's building a development version of our website. When we use Parcel build, it'll actually build the final version of our website in that folder. And then this folder will have a separate like index.html, separate JavaScript files, everything you need to deploy the actual project. So when you deploy, you don't deploy all of this. You just take this folder and the contents of this folder and put that out online. Hello world, good. It works. And the cool thing is that it's hot reloading, which means if I were to do something like this, let's go back to app.js. And let's say I want to change the color. So the style inline component in React, you would just put in a style property. We would use curly brackets to kind of escape out of JSX back into JavaScript. And then we pass in a JavaScript object with all our CSS properties. So we'll just say color orange. Save. Oh, we don't need a semicolon there. Just like that. Save. Okay. And then let's watch what happens. This is going to change to orange. And it changes to orange. It just hot reloads. Very nice. It's like Notamon if you're working on a server. Haha. Cool. Now let's take a look at, let's stop building, let's kill the server, Control C. And what I'm going to do is we're going to Parcel build so you can see what the result is there. So Parcel build, and this will build out the final file. Okay, so see it's building. What? Something went wrong. Let's see where it went wrong. If I was running Parcel build. Oh, I typed in Parcel build. I didn't actually type in like Parcel build index.html. I'm supposed to type in npm run, and actually, what did I name that script? Did I call it build or start? Yeah, that should be build. You can call it start, but it's just not really what it's doing. So npm run, no. Save. npm run build. And that's running this script right here, Parcel build index.html. So see, now it's working because I'm actually giving it a file to build. So you could have different builds, okay? So you can have different HTML files and then just build the HTML file for the website you're building. There's different ways you can use this. It's pretty neat. Okay, it's building, it's building. This will take a bit, but essentially what's going to do is going to put out the final result here, and something like this. So you'll see it's an index.html, and technically all the JavaScript, everything we do in our source code here, ends up being built out to these JavaScript files. So it's like right there. And then basically all you would do is you can actually literally just plop this folder in Netlify, or if you're using Netlify, you could just basically have this Git repository on GitHub, and then you would just basically connect your Netlify account to GitHub and just say serve your project from this folder, from the dist folder. Or you could do that from GitHub Pages. You can just say, hey, serve the project, from GitHub Pages. Don't do it from the main folder, the root. Do it from the distribution folder, because that's where the index.html and all the supporting files are. And it would just work. And there you go. You have a React project. Okay, not bad. So let's see here. But just remember that if you want it to work, it has to serve from this folder. So let's try it out. So if I right click this particular, not the index.html I have here, this is my development HTML. This is my actual final production HTML. And see, like this code's a little bit different. See, it's all like crunched. Everything here is all, if you look in these files, it's all like unreadable text. It doesn't matter. It works. Basically what happens is that Parcel, whether you're using Parcel, Rollup, Webpack, it just crunches it down into something much more efficient, but much more unreadable. But it should work. So if I right click this and I open it up with live server, has to be opened up with a web server, it should work. So let's see, we're giving it a second. So it's opened up on port 550-500, and it's opening it up. And boo, where's my hello world? Why don't you like it? Okay. Let's see here. Script to do. Interesting. I just open it up directly, so I'm going to open it up in the containing folder. And open this HTML with Google Chrome. Interesting. There must be something that I'm not thinking of here, because otherwise it was working. npm run build. Let me head back to my. This is like my previous template that I've used for other projects. Index.html. Anything I'm forgetting here? That source say yep. It might be that defer. Oh no, I have it there and it works. Package.json, index, Babel. Oh, I need to have the Babel RC. That's what I'm missing. Okay, so just copy this literally this line. So copy this. So we're gonna have to create a file. It just tells Babel what to do. That's why I built funny. So new file dot Babel RC. This is just the configuration file for Babel, and we just have to tell it to use that preset. That's why it didn't compile right. Cool. So I'm going to leave that up there for a second. You can feel free to pause it. Just create this file, Babel RC, with a dot in front of it. Okay, and now let's rebuild it. Let's see if we get a better result. Okay, and I will pause while that builds. Okay, so that's finished building. Cool. Now let's go over here and try to open this file again. Dist. Okay, and index.html. Open with live server. Still. Porque. Okay, so here we go. So basically nothing was wrong. It was working. For just some reason, when you use live server to preview the website, it just doesn't work. So you get that. But when I go and I drop the folder onto Netlify, it works just fine. Okay, and if you don't have a Netlify account, I highly recommend it. You can pretty much spin up as many free websites as you want. You just take the folder, you would just take the so you'd go back to your main page, and you would just drop the folder right there. You would just drag and drop the folder right there, the dist folder, and the website's up. So here we go. And then when you want to redeploy it or update it, you would just go to the page, click on deploys, drop the folder right there, and it's up. Okay, so that's why one of the things I like Netlify, because it's really easy to deploy. But yeah, so basically your final output will be here, and it'll be whatever you did in development. But for some reason, previewing it using live server doesn't work so well. So I have to think of a better way to preview your final output without necessarily having to deploy it. But I guess deploying it's one way to check it. Okay. But that basically is how you set up your template. The last thing I want to talk about is if you want to use style sheets. So if you want to use style sheets, again, you can, if you have a CSS or SCSS folder, just put your style sheets in there, and you can make as many as you want. That's the great thing about this, is that the way it'll work is that you import your style sheets where you want to use them, and then Parcel will bundle it and figure out how to make it work. So that way, those styles only apply in the places you imported it. So new file, we'll just create a app.css. So then here in app.css, what I will do is I will import .css/app.css. And now, if I go to that CSS file and I do something like h1 is color red, save. Okay, npm run build, npm run dev, and then we'll see that now the h1 is red. Okay, so just give it a second to rebuild everything. But in this case, now you have your template created. So if you want to create a new project, you can just basically copy the same template and work from there. So that way you don't have to do this every single time. Okay, one other little change I made, but I don't think that made a difference. But what I did do is, in trying to figure out what I was figuring out before, was I just moved my script tag to the bottom of my body tag. But as long as you have the defer keyword up here, it should still work. It's just, again, it's just for some reason the distribution folder, when you run it with live server, just doesn't show you what you want to see. So let's see here, did this load up yet? Let me close these out. See, and there you go. See, the style sheet applies. So that's how you would use style sheets in this. In the next video, we'll go over more about actually using React now that we have our boilerplate set up. But yeah, so I'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you very much.